our slideshow on writing skills and students with intellectual disabilities. So, in this presentation, we're going to go over the definition of intellectual disabilities as well as strategies for teachers to help them in the classroom and also strategies for parents to help them outside of the classroom and further their kids' learning.
So, what are intellectual disabilities? Intellectual disabilities are characterized by significant limitations both in intellectual functioning and adaptive behavior, expressed in conceptual, social, and practical adaptive skills. It originates before age 22 and it encapsulates 6.7% of students ages 6 to 21 served under IDEA. The main characteristics of ID are slower pace of learning, lack of age-appropriate adaptive behavior and social skills, below average language and academic skills, and those with ID may have difficulty learning basic skills or have poor motor skills. So we've outlined 4 strategies for those for serving students with ID. 2 are for strategies in the classroom, and 2 strategies are for parents or at home in general.
Our first strategy, and one of the most accessible, is implementing what's known as assistive technology. So, the use of high and low tech adaptations can seriously improve the learning experience for a student with intellectual disabilities. This strategy can be impactful in various ways. Anything from something simple like a pencil grip to help students that are struggling with motor skills, to something specifically designed like speech to text software, kind of like Siri. One of the articles we chose, Teaching Writing Skills to Students with Intellectual Disability, from the journal Teaching Exceptional Children, emphasizes that students with intellectual disabilities often struggle with the efficient production of handwritten text. So the accommodations used in the classroom don't necessarily need to change the target of producing expressive text, but should offer students with intellectual disabilities the opportunity to construct prose using alternate response forms. This could be a class discussion to check for understanding, or using the previously mentioned software to write a paper rather than having them fill out a worksheet by hand or write a paragraph in their journal.
Our next strategy is the use of concrete examples with explicit instruction. Students with ID may experience difficulty understanding abstract information and completing complex multi-step tasks. Concrete examples and explicit instruction address these 2 barriers in different ways. Providing concrete examples make the content easier to understand by connecting it to familiar experiences. Explicit instruction makes the process easier to follow by breaking it into smaller steps and directly teaching each one. These strategies can be used together. First, make the concept understandable, and then clearly teach the student how to complete the task. Concrete examples provide students with clearer context. They connect learning to familiar experiences, and they make the abstract understandable. They're especially useful when introducing new concepts. Teachers can use real objects, photographs, familiar experiences, or specific situations. And with explicit instruction, the teacher first identifies the exact skill being taught and breaks it into smaller, ordered steps. The teacher then models each step, allows the student to practice, provides prompts and immediate feedback, and then gradually reduces assistance, while the student gradually progresses towards independence. The goal is not to complete the task, but for the student to be provided with structured support and for the student to experience and gradually perform the skill independently.
Okay, so I'm going to be presenting on the adaptations for parents. So the 2 strategies to better serve students with ID at home. So the first strategy is structured share book reading. Parents are trained to use very intentional reading routines at home. And what stood out is how much these simple structured interactions supported the literacy growth in the students. Um, so the structured shared book reading is it's not just sitting with a book and reading it to the child. It's sort of like a way to guide the child through the story and not only hearing languages, but actively connecting the sounds, the words, and all the meanings. So, parents in this study that we found learned to pause during reading, point to pictures, really focus in on key words, and give their child time to respond. Um, so most things like even like the small moments of like, hey, what sound does this start with? Or where do you see the pig? Really helped the child link the text that they were reading to the phonetics and vocabulary that they were learning in the intervention. Um, Children knew what to expect at and that sense of structure helped them stay engaged. The study showed that when parents use these strategies consistently, their child made real progress in learning or early reading skills. So, like letter sound knowledge and recognizing high frequency words. And it also wasn't about long sessions or complicated material. It was just that more meaningful interaction between the parent and the child. So a few of like the methods that they would use is like the pause, prompt, and praise during the reading. So the this keeps the child engaged and builds comprehension. So the pause is like taking a brief pause in your reading after like a keyword or like a picture, and then asking a simple question is the prompt. And then praise is just reinforce any attempt. So if you point out like, hey, where's the pig? And they point out to a different animal, you still give them praise for, associating like a pig is an animal, but it's still different types, but it was just there was an attempt and so the next strategy for this is highlighting letters to sound connections. So pick at least two or three target letters and point them out whenever they appear. Another strategy is build words using pictures in the book. So, like I was saying, if it shows like an animal or something, the book, or like if, like I was saying, if it shows like a pig or like a certain animal in the book, you use that as a mini word building moment. Uh, and then, like I was saying, you have to keep the sessions short. The study was suggesting that sessions should be about 5 to 10 minutes, and that's really not that long. So, our next strategy is therapeutic communication. So, therapeutic communication um, helps children who have intellectual disabilities. It's really about creating a sense of safety for the child. The way that we talk, the tone that we use, and the patience we show, um, a child feels so it's so the child feels an understanding instead of being overwhelmed. So, like many kids, especially those who struggle with transitions or new environments, that feeling of being emotionally grounded is what makes learning the possible easiest for these children that have these um, disabilities. Um, so when an adult uses the therapeutic communication, it's more of a slowed down version of communicating with another person, specifically between a parent and a child. So the child gets time to process what's happening, and the adult has the ability to stay calm and steady, even if the child is, struggling or having like a tough moment with what they're being taught. And then if a child starts to melt down, the goal isn't to push through the lesson, it's to pause and help them settle and then come back when they're ready. And then teachers in the study talked about how nothing productive happens when a child is in the middle of a tantrum. So that shift can completely change the experience for a child even at home. Okay, I think that is Oh, yeah. So the steps for the therapeutic communication or like the building blocks is building an emotional safety and a trust for the students, increasing engagement, and it just reduces stress and supports independence and adaptive skills and helps manage challenging behaviors. But it also strengthens that teacher to parent collaboration as well.
So, focusing on the right strategies within this counseling yields the strongest results. And we've seen that in the realm of feedback and learning, as the client's perception of their experience with the therapist they work with is one of the strongest predictors of treatment outcomes in their children. Since parents are the first teachers that children have, they have a unique perspective in how their child learns and how their child gains motivation. And that's a big reason why interventions where the parents are involved can be highly effective and more effective than those without. And to conclude, students with intellectual disabilities benefit greatly from explicit and concrete instruction that can connect to their everyday lives. Assistive technology can increase classroom participation, while systematic prompting can help students be more independent. Structured shared reading can also bring this assistance to the homes of students, and it can reinforce student learning, things they've learned before, and pairing this with positive feedback, communication with instructors and parents, it can build student confidence.
That concludes our presentation, and thank you very much.